How many people find themselves at the end of their life regretful and realizing they had their chances many times over, but because of fear and doubt, they didn't, they just didn't live their life the way they would want it to, or they didn't live their life on their own terms. Are you living your life without regrets? Hey everyone, my name is James Nussbaumer, and I'm the author of these two books. The first one, these first two books of an ever-developing series, and there's more to come, but the first book is The Master of Everything. It's a story of mankind in the world of illusion we call life. And the second book, the sequel, is called Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom, Lessons from A Course in Miracles. And both of these books are on sale everywhere books are sold all over the world. And they're published by Ozark Mountain Publishing Company. And I want to ask you for a moment here to take a moment and just take a quiet moment here while you're listening to me. And in your mind's eye, see yourself facing a crisis. With that crisis, do you make any changes in your life? Let's say it's the death of someone very dear to you. Picture yourself going to the funeral. The sky is cloudy, dark, and gray as you drive to the funeral parlor or church and park your car. Inside, you notice beautifully arranged flowers. Soft organ music is playing. You recognize the faces of family and friends as you find your way through the room. You feel the shared sorrow of loss, as well as the joy of having known the individual that radiates from the hearts of the people present. You sense a certain oneness, a wholeness, a unified purpose for being there with others. As you walk to the front of the room and look inside the casket, you suddenly come face to face with yourself. Yes, you're looking at yourself. This is your funeral a few years from today. All these people have come to honor your life, to express feelings of love and appreciation for your contribution to their life. As you take a seat and wait for the service to begin, you look at the program in your hand. There's scheduled to be 4 speakers. The first is from your family, immediate and also extended, children and others who have come from all over the country to attend your funeral. The second speaker is one of your friends. You've played a lot of golf with this person, with this guy or gal, and over the years, his goal is to give you a sense of what you are to the core as a person, to let your loved ones know how he feels about you, to your inner core. The third speaker is from your work or profession. The fourth is from your church or some community organization or civic organization where you volunteered your services. Now think deeply and sincerely. What would you like each of these speakers to say about you and your life? What kind of husband or wife, father or mother would you like their words to describe as a reflection of who you are, as a reflection of your presence in their lives? What kind of a son or daughter? What kind of friend? What kind of work associate? What character would you like them to see in you? What contributions or achievements would you like them to remember? Look carefully at the people around you. What difference would you like to have made in their lives? Try to honestly find these answers within yourself. Once you have looked at this picture and found the answers, you have touched for a moment, for a brief moment, a glimpse, if you will, however briefly, much of the real, deep, fundamental, and natural aspects of your mind. That's what you've touched. Yes. The value of who you are is what you've touched. You have, in that brief instant, established contact with that inner guidance system at the core of your true essence. This is the center of the light that is what and who you are. It's your divinity. In other words, this communication was with your real self, your own holiness, or we might simply say it's your spirituality. You were briefly in a timeless zone that is called the real world. And until quickly a false idea of who you are, called the ego, crept back in and convinced you that time is your reality. You may have just heard a motorcycle go by in the background, but the reality of that motorcycle going in the background, there's a friend of mine that I know driving through the area, and I just know that it's him because I can tell by the sound of his, but he's at one with the world when he's on that Harley driving by. You know, and without ego interference, he is not afraid to touch the real essence of who he is. You know, and I use that motorcycle just as an example because it's a part of the material world. But if it's something that we love doing that reflects our inner reality, you know, that's pretty cool, isn't it? The ego in us is not a friend of time, but pretends and represents what is not really the real who we are. You know, the ego likes to pretend that it's a friend of time, but it really isn't. It only uses time in order to convince you how separate you are from the wholeness of divinity because it can't understand wholeness. It wants to convince you that you're separate instead of being whole. The ego-based mind uses time to keep you loyal by keeping conflict alive because it wants you, the real divine you. It wants the real divine you to be part of its toughest thought system that believes it makes its own reality. Does that sound familiar? The ego-based mind supplies our thoughts of conflict, our questions and doubts about life beyond this world, and our worries about the future, and full of regrets. Without time, nothing can cause conflict. Think about that. There is nothing to try to make sense of without time. There's nothing to be curious about and nothing to strive for without time. In my second book of this ever-developing series, my second book called Mastering Your Own Spiritual Freedom, in this book, I will address why the ego-based mind is the preferred thought system for which most of us operate, though we don't realize it, that we are imprisoned by the ego-based mind. We'll also examine another option, the timeless. The ego in all of us has its creed to live, a special creed that the ego lives by, and it's called gain at all cost. It doesn't trust. The ego does not trust death because it's afraid. Not knowing what to expect, the ego doesn't know what to expect when we decease and leave this planet. Therefore, the ego's strange religion must teach itself and you that it can promise you a future beyond the grave, complete with its own uncertain ideas of heaven. The ego tells you that your unwillingness to buy into its teachings can result in an eternal future burning in a place of its own invention that it calls hell. This is the ego's primary scare tactic, and it religiously uses this concept, this fire and hell concept, for its survival. The ego speaks to you of heaven, but insists you are not ready and that more preparation is needed. But let me ask you a question, and then I'll help you answer it. If the ego teaches you these things, these false ideas of yourself and of the world, then who is teaching the ego? You do. You teach the ego, and is why it makes a life for you based on these false ideas that seem to be a vicious circle in that we live our life to the bitter end in fear. The ego creates the circle of illusion, a path to nothingness. Yes, nothingness. Here's to your real self, everyone. And I wish the best life for you possible. And by the way, before I go, make sure to please subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. I believe it's a red button on YouTube. If you're at that channel watching this, just click on there to subscribe. And I'd like to quickly add that I have a system that I use to claim real abundance in my life, where it allows me to have no regrets. And if you'd like to know more about that, there's a link in the description box that takes you directly to a page at my website, and you can learn more. I hope this was interesting, and I hope you found it to be thought-provoking. God bless, and I wish the best for you. Thanks for being my friend.